Hi everyone, and welcome back to another of these RCGP sessions. The aim of this series is to prepare you and answer some of those frequently asked questions that most of us get towards the end of our training. We're going to be joined by GPs from a range of different backgrounds, sharing their experiences and top tips across a broad range of different subject areas. I'm Anthony, I'm an ST3, and I'm your host today. For this session, we're joined by another amazing GP, Dr. Jamie Hynes. Jamie is a GP in the Midlands. He's a trainer and a training program director. And today we're going to be talking all about education and training. And once you've CCT'd, how you can get more involved in teaching if it's something that you're interested or passionate about. Hi, Jamie. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Anthony. Thanks for inviting me.
So I guess a really good question to kick off with is, why is training and education something that's important to you, and how you kind of started off that journey?
Okay. I think for a lot of people who are qualifying at the moment, we'll all have those good examples and sort of, seeing how training's being delivered to you at the moment. And hopefully you'll find plenty of examples where you feel inspired, that you just think, wow, that was really good. I really sort of caught on to what the message was there, and find ways that you just thought, wow, I've never thought of teaching it like that. So hopefully there's plenty of those examples. But of course, there are going to be examples where people have felt, I'm not quite sure that was the best way. I can think of a better way of doing that. And if you've got that spark through your training and think, I'm sure there's a better way, and I think I know how to do that, then those are the kind of things that will get you into training and get that interest and just start that flame that can just be built and nurtured and kindled over time. But speaking from a personal perspective, why did I get involved in training? It's a little bit selfish. It's all about retaining information. Something called the learning pyramid is involved in sort of the different methods and educational methods that you can come across in how you retain information. So unsurprisingly, lectures are the lowest sort of a method that you can retain information from. But if you teach that topic to other people, that's the way you retain information. So I remember one of the things that I got involved with was, as a GP trainee, teaching on depression. And at the time we were using the International Classification of Diseases. And I still remember that topic to this day, that we, through the ICD-10, you would classify depression as, okay, it's got to be 2 out of 3 of the 3 L's. But the idea is that you remember these educational sessions that you have delivered and say, right, that stays with me. And that's the way that we sort of, selfishly as GPs, we want to hold on to that information so that we're making evidence-based decisions and doing the care that matters most to patients.
Yeah, I mean, I think that even from my own experiences of kind of education so far, I think that as I come towards the end of my training, the relationship that I've had with my training program directors and my trainers that I've had throughout the years has always been really incredible. And I think being able to leave that kind of legacy and kind of help people at the very start of their career must be a really rewarding process as well. And then in addition, like you say, using it to also kind of keep yourself current, keep yourself up to date. I guess
Absolutely.
it's a way to go about doing that.
Yeah, and you key into it fantastically there. Talking about legacy, talking about that sort of idea of sort of being able to pass on the benefits of your experience.
And that's kind of why teaching, and then I guess about the how. So you mentioned doing some having some experience during your GP training years. Was that the first experience you had, or when did you start to kind of build up an interest or skill set in teaching?
I think it's there right through from starting medical school. I mean, you get these teaching opportunities, whether it's, you're a second year teaching first years, or final years teaching third years, or then going through foundation training. You'll always have these opportunities to see, hopefully, good examples of teaching and examples where you feel that something has worked or something just hasn't worked. That's just as valuable, where you make a mistake, reflect on it and think, this is what I could go through. So there's always those opportunities. And I was always sort of, looking at those going right the way through from medical school, going through into sort of, foundation jobs, into specialty training as well. And then you steal people's ideas. Absolutely fine. You see what works for you and just think, right, I'm having that phrase, I'm having that method of teaching. That was something that really stayed with me. And then you sort of, you get involved. So obviously you may be in a practice where there are more than one trainee, where you're teaching maybe one of the ST2 years as a final year, and then you can sort of get involved in those kind of teaching sessions. And then beyond CCT, it's up to you where you want to plan out your career. Do you want to be in a training practice where you can get involved in training straight away, and obviously observing the teaching sessions, all the different ways that they're being delivered, all the changes that are happening in education, and then just putting yourself forward and say, right, okay, what are the ground rules? Which bit of teaching do I want to be involved with? Which level of teaching would I like it to be with? Is it going to be medical students? Is it going to be postgraduates? Is it going to be foundation year GP training? It's all open to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we always talk around the different opportunities that exist within career in general practice, but even when you kind of touch on something like education, there are just so many different elements to that, and different levels that you can be teaching at, and different ways that you can be displaying those skills and getting that diverse career that people are looking for. So I think that is a really good reflection. Have you had, obviously you're a trainer and a training program director, is that what you always kind of thought you wanted to get into, or have you had other experiences as well after CCT?
I was completely wanting it, probably from that final year, from sort of second year, third year. I had excellent role models. I trained on the Dudley scheme in the Black Country, and I just saw such good role models that I just thought, that's what I want to do with my career post CCT. So I stayed in the practice that I trained at, became the trainer when I was able to, but got involved with training right from the start in terms of putting myself forward with medical student teaching. We also taught physician associates as well in the very early days of physician associate teaching, so that helped embed those sort of educational methods and learning by mistakes and learning through experience in terms of what works and what doesn't. And then when the opportunities came up, I just said, right, I'd like to now move it on and become a training program director as well.
And so in terms of that journey, it's something that I really don't know much about. So if someone wants to become a trainer, what's the process that you have to go through? What are the steps that people would have to kind of consider to get there?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is membership of the college. Membership of the college obviously, ties you in with all these training resources and opportunities. Going to the Royal College Annual Conference, there's huge educational streams for those people who are interested in educational content, in terms of just adding those tools to your educational techniques and repertoire, so that you can just expand these learning opportunities and learn the different kind of techniques and methods that will help you just make your teaching interesting and engaging. And you get sort of, right, this is the message I want to pass across. What method am I going to get across with? And you can learn those different techniques. In terms of post-CCT, you're not allowed to be a GP trainer straight away, but that's not going to stop you getting involved with different educational opportunities. So if you're in a training practice, you can still be the assessor for things like your CBDs or your COTS, or these new assessments that have come along. So that's something you can do straight away. Training program director as well, you can theoretically get involved with that, although there are little bits of extra desirable qualifications that go alongside that. But if you wanted to get involved and say, right, let me get sorted with medical student teaching, we take on final year medical students at the practice, and it's a useful thing in terms of carrying out a learning needs assessment, planning learning opportunities and tutorials, and seeing what works. But yeah, I found while I couldn't be a GP trainer, that was when I got involved in physician associate training, learn the different sorts of methods to take on board. And then when I was ready, it's just a case of getting approved as a GP trainer, which is a little bit easier when you're already in a training practice. But you just need a visit from your area director, who develop a personal development plan from an educational point of view, and then get you approved as a GP trainer. One of the other things that you have to do for a GP trainer is to get on a Health Education England approved course that says, right, you've now trained as a trainer. When I did it, it was a residential course, and it was fantastic. 5 days, and we just sort of stayed in and learned so much. Still got all the materials that I had back then. Still got very fond memories of that time when I did it 10 years ago now.
That's great. And I think something I was just thinking of as you were talking about that is also, I've often heard of my trainers talking about kind of their trainer workshops as well, and they've sometimes had residentials. Yes. So in some ways it seems like a nice way to, one of the things we all love about VTS is that sense of community. It always feels that amongst the educational community, there's also that real strong community and a chance to connect and network with like-minded people and their interests as well.
And it's just a fabulous opportunity to steal their ideas and, you know, get in touch with your local TPDs wherever you move to and say, when's your next trainers workshop? Can I come along? You know, all these kind of things where you can say, you know, this is the next generation of GP trainers. But yes, there's nothing to stop somebody who's a prospective trainer or looking to get involved in education, just going along to these workshops. They're usually 3 or 4 times a year. So just get in touch with your local training scheme and say, can you add me to the list? Obviously, at the moment, things are all virtual. Fingers crossed we'll get back to face-to-face, because there's a lot of things that you can learn outside the content that's delivered at these kind of workshops and training events.
Yeah, definitely. And then in terms of your story, so you became a trainer and also now a training program director. What was that kind of transition? What was that transition like? Was it a kind of a big jump in terms of like skills or experience, or was it just kind of you gradually built stuff up and then felt it was the right time?
It's a sort of a blink and you'll miss it. You know, there was a time where I was just starting out and all these kind of things, and now it's very difficult to separate the educational elements of what I do, including in my appraisals. It's packed full of all my sort of educational work and the things that I do to keep up to date as a trainer and as a training program director. And you get these sorts of, you know, wonderful opportunities to network with these other colleagues that you can respect, and then all of a sudden they're your peers, and then, you know, colleagues that work alongside you. So there's so many opportunities, and like I say, you know, best way of retaining all that information is to run that teaching session on others. So when the prescribing assessment came along, it was just like, right, how am I going to assimilate all of this? I'm going to teach it to the other TPDs. So off I went, and that's what we did at one of our TPD workshops. And then, you know, circulate it on Twitter and these kind of things as well. But it was very useful at sort of, you know, just building it all up. And, you know, whichever stage you're at, you know, you can teach your peer group. If you've got a sort of a group of you that studied together, and post CCT, you've got first 5 opportunities, next generation GP. The world is open for those teaching opportunities. And it's just basically saying, let me have a go, let me make mistakes, let me learn from them, and sort of, you know, build my own toolkit, because it's one of the key elements that keeps me sane in general practice. I think, you know, that people will describe me as a portfolio GP, and I've never really felt that way, although clearly I am. But it's one of the things that I think if I was doing full-time general practice and that's it, I'd need something else as an outlet. And this is one of the most rewarding outlets that I get in terms of the contributions I can make, whether it's on the training scheme or whether it's with my own trainees that come, you know, week to week, and I can review their portfolios at a distance.
I mean, it's throughout this series, it's been really, really nice to speak to so many different GPs, all with you know, different passions and different interests, different backgrounds and experiences. But to kind of, especially as I'm coming up to that transition out of training, really, I mean, I hear and see it all the time, and I know that, you know, there are so many incredible GPs doing amazing things. But to be able to have these types of conversations really just emphasizes the scope of what's ahead, and how you really can build a fulfilling, meaningful career that gives you satisfaction across so many different levels. So I think that's what I've taken from this, is just your passion for this is something that gives you that sense of satisfaction. And
it's part of those things that, you know, when you're a sort of a trainer or a TPD, people can often get pictures in their mind of sort of, you've got to do lectures and you've got to teach me these techniques and clinical stuff. That's only probably about a 1/6 of what we teach. You know, if you want to look into this is all in Harden and Crosby's 12 Roles of a Medical Teacher. It's the 20th anniversary this year of this educational method, but it's fascinating. And it was one of the things that when I was going through my training as a teacher, I just thought, I want to be able to create resources, to create sort of materials that help engage trainees or sort of, you know, students, doctors, these kind of things. And so this is what led me to sort of do the kind of videos and poems and these kind of things that I've done since, getting involved in the college faculty, all these other areas. But a huge part of being a teacher is being a role model. And unfortunately, role modeling doesn't stop, whether you're doing it positively or negatively. Now, there are going to be some people who unfortunately end up, you know, giving off the wrong kind of role modeling. But there are certain values and certain things where, you know, you can role model that compassion, that honesty, that integrity, just silently, but just showing trainees and colleagues how you move through difficulties like we're facing through the pandemic, and how you adjust to that change, and how you sort of role model that professional behavior as you do that. And then, unfortunately, sometimes you have to make it explicit, a bit like I'm doing now. You have to make it explicit that you are deliberately doing those and role modeling those behaviors, because we see enough negative examples. And what we want in GP training are those people that will step up and be enthusiastic and role model those behaviors, because that's the way that we retain our profession. That's the way we safeguard the future, by having, people who love their job.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think, again, as I come towards the end of training, it was like a reflective time over what's happened over the last 4 years, and especially throughout all of the new ST1 starting fairly recently and the activity around that. I've said time and time again that I felt that GP training has really helped me to flourish as an individual. And part of that is definitely down to, particularly, I think, my training program directors. And hi, Vic and Marcus, if you are watching this.
Hi, Vic and Marcus.
But genuinely, I think that the idea of role modeling and kind of being a really positive influence throughout that kind of really formative stage of someone's general practice career has had a huge impact on me. And yeah, so I think all training program directors, if they do that really well, and trainers and anyone who's involved in educating people at any level, is such an important part. You really do help to shape people's kind of perspectives and future direction, which again is when it's done right, it's really done right. And I think that's something that when he does it should feel really proud of.
That's true. Yeah.
So in terms of finishing off, do you have any kind of top tips that you would give for people who are interested in thinking about a career in education? What are the first things they to do once they've finished training and got their CCT?
Okay. First thing is definitely do it. It's fab. All right. Very much enjoy it. I think get into practice with whatever teaching methods, whether that's peer-to-peer in your sort of newly qualified first 5 groups, in practice or with students. One helpful thing is go and observe one of your local ARCP panels. Because you get to see the other side of it, how we appraise portfolios and the kind of rigorous techniques that we use to make sure that the trainees have covered what they need to cover during training. Another thing that unfortunately we can't do at the moment, but when you do get the opportunity to do it, observe the CSA. Because then again, you get the examiner's perspective and the role player's perspective on what goes into that examination and the things that people are looking for and the way things are structured behind the scenes in what seems like a terrifying experience as a trainee. But it's one of those things that you see the other side of the coin. You say, right, I like the structure and the way that this is all done. Attend your local trainers workshops. Fantastic idea. Get in touch with your local trainers community. They'll welcome you with open arms, and they'll be able to sort of, point you in the right directions of resources that help them. And I think a lesson that we've learned through the COVID pandemic, be ready for change. One of the things, obviously, that the people that will follow in your footsteps, Anthony, is that they'll see the new e-portfolio, all the different things, leadership, MSFs, care assessment tools, and all these kind of terminology that if you qualified a year or 2 ago, you'll be like, oh, what's that? What's that been? So be ready for that change. And it's it's nice and comforting when things are the things that you've always known, but actually when you're progressing things, you're just thinking, actually, this is a great idea. Why weren't we doing this before? This is another thing that will help to round off and get people prepared. So the gaps of GP training just get smaller and smaller, so people feel ready to get started when they're ready to CCT and then move into our profession.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing your experiences and your tips. I think this has been really valuable for me. Like I said, training is not something that I've necessarily had an opportunity to think too much about, but seeing your enthusiasm for it has really kind of made me think about how I could incorporate that into some of my future as well, perhaps. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for taking part this evening.
And remember, when you're teaching, look at the background, be creative. Because there's always room for innovation and enthusiasm and imagination in your training. It's vital. We don't want boring lectures and lectures. We want it to be enjoyable.
Definitely not. I mean, I think those are wise words to finish on. So thank you again, Jamie. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll see you next time for another one of these RCGP sessions. Take care. Bye-bye.